Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you have decided to join in on this online Bible study entitled Determined to Rise. I'm Evangelist Matthew Miles, Senior Minister of the Central Point Church of Christ here in the Bloomington, Illinois. This class is based upon a book written by a very talented young man, Anthony Carter. He published this book in 2008. But I believe it's a wonderful book, and I believe it's very much so needed in classroom form today, because we're living through so many trials, so many tests of life, through an actual pandemic. And this book is a self-help book, if you would, that help us to become the best us that we can be. He gives 5 foundational stones that will help you to rise from whatever situation you're in, whatever place you're in, to where you want to be. So before we get into the formal introduction of this study and book, I would like to share another quote from the book. The quote is by David Joseph Schwartz Jr., who is an American national writer and coach. The quote goes like this: "The person determined to achieve maximum success learns the principle of progress is made," here it is, "one step at a time. A house is built one brick at a time. A football game is won one play at a time. A department store grows bigger one customer at a time. Every big accomplishment is a series of little accomplishments," end quote. And we can see that, and we should see that. We must be patient in progress of life. Nothing comes overnight that's worth or value of anything. It takes time. Write that down in your notes. Good things take time. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly how every successful accomplishment that lasts for a long haul makes it, and that is at one step at a time. You see, you must make a plan. Listen carefully. You must make a plan, then work the plan step by step. Every small goal leads and bring you one step closer to the end goal. But you got to make a plan, and you got to be committed and be consistent to the plan, and take one step at a time. You see, there must be a plan process in order for success. Let me say that again. There must be a plan process for success. Beloved, there is a biblical principle that's found in the book of Luke chapter 14 and verse 28, for those who are taking notes. Luke 14 and verse 20. I want to share this principle, which teaches us that there must be a plan. In other words, there must be preparation, a process, if you're going to achieve a goal. Luke 14 and verse number 28, the Bible says in the New Living Translation, "But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there is enough money to finish it?" You see, sometime in life, the only thing that hinders or stops our success, beloved, from becoming a reality is our patience and being too much in a hurry. For instance, you remember, and perhaps some of you have seen it quite often, the cartoon of a guy, and sometimes it's more than one guy, who's digging for a treasure. They're actually digging and digging consistently. And there are cartoons that give 2 different principles, but it gives the same message of patience. And so as one cartoon gives, and it teaches a principle of not being in a hurry. Not being in a hurry. There's the picture of a man who is using a backhoe, if you will, to dig for a treasure. Well, the only problem with this is that he's such in a hurry and he's moving so much at one time. He has already dug up the treasure surrounded by dirt, impacted in dirt, and have already thrown it to the side and don't know it because he's been in a hurry and trying to do too much at one time, which calls for patience. But then there's another picture. The second picture of that is of a man who's digging for the treasure, and he's digging with his hands, and he's being consistent and committed until his patience runs short. And the cartoon shows that just as he was giving up, just a few feet below lie the treasure. The Apostle Peter, he makes it clear that patience helps us to be partakers of Christ's divine nature. Let me say that again. It is patience that helps us to be partakers of Christ's divine nature. And that it helps us, watch this, to escape the corruption of the world, in particular, lust. Patience helps us to escape the corruption of the world, and in particular, lust. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 4 and verse number 6. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, it is important. It's important for you to understand at the outset of any goal that if you are going to rise, if you are going to be determined to rise, you are going to have to be patient. It's going to take some patience. Now let's get to the introduction. The introduction of this book is entitled, Put Your Walking Shoes On. Put your walking shoes on. In the introduction, our author, Tony, recalls one early morning when he bolted up in bed around about 4:30 a.m., woke up out of a dream that was provoked by the powerful quote of W.E.B. Du Bois that his wife had taped onto his bathroom window, or mirror, shall I say. The quote stated as such: "There is in this world no such force as the force of a man determined to rise." End quote. Tony states that it was that quote that had already motivated him to start his then radio show entitled Determined to Rise. There was two main goals of this radio show. It was to celebrate ordinary people doing ordinary things. Many guests who appeared on the show who had accomplished extraordinary things. Tony was privileged to interview several exciting guests. There was the set of twins that he had a chance to interview, or the opportunity. Sean and Shane Ward, whose shoe company, Ditney, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Detny, was being traded on the stock exchange. Tony interviewed the likes of comedian Monique, who left the workforce after stints of fast food restaurant jobs and working for a telephone company and other less glamorous jobs. She left that, and the story says she left to pursue her dream and her career as a comedian. That interview, Tony recalls, was truly inspirational, and I'm sure his viewers felt the same way. Tony was privileged to interview the likes of Shaka Khan, who told Tony of how she ran away and how her running away from home and how she was saved only by her being discovered as a teenager because of the power in her voice. Tony recalls how there's and many other voices that drifted through his head as he slept. All these voices had something in common, beloved. Number one, they knew what their purpose were. The question today is, do you know your purpose? These success stories that he shared with our nation through his radio program, one of the common things they had was that they knew what their purpose was. Number two, they were living their dreams. Each one that he interviewed were now living their dream. They were all determined to rise. They were all determined to rise. They were not satisfied with where they were. Are you satisfied today where you are? Then it was that it all came together for Tony as he reflected on these wonderful people who did extraordinary things. Brothers and sisters, as the cobwebs dissolved from his mind and as his eyes focus and Tony stumbles out of bed and he makes his way to the kitchen, he recalls how he was frantically, like I've done many times when I come across a thought. Sometimes I'm in a restaurant and get a napkin and write on the napkin, but he recalls how he was searching frantically for a pen and some paper. You see, Tony had realized that he had been given the 5 steps. He saw them in his mind as clear as day. Tony felt that he had been guided in those steps, and he was ready and in a hurry to record this story so that he might share it with all of us. Tony counted this experience as a wonderful gift. You see, this awesome documented work that we are investigating and that we're sharing with you was all started when Tony took a notebook from his daughter's backpack. And the story says, and I want to show you just how determined he was, he found a dulled pencil. And he couldn't wait to find the pencil sharpener, so he used his thumbnail to create an edge on the pencil for the lead. And he scribbled out the outline for this very book, this work that we are reviewing, Determined to Rise. You see, brothers and sisters, do you see what I see? This very work was started with a determined heart of a man who was determined to rise. And you're going to see that throughout this book, just how determined Tony Carter was to rise from where he was in his present life. Tony was so excited that he had to share it with us and everyone else who will be reading this book. So we say, put on your stepping shoes, because here we go. We're going on an adventure here. So we said he talks about 5 steps to find you, the best you. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't seem like too many steps, does it? It really doesn't. 5 steps, that's all, Brother Miles? Listen, Tony wants you to understand that wherever you are in life, most likely you are closer to the best you than you think. Have you figured out by now? We're talking about patience today. One of the greatest virtues that's going to get you to where you need to be. That's going to get you over that proverbial hump. That's going to get you on the other side of that proverbial mountain. That's going to help you cross that sea, that proverbial sea that is between you and where you want to be. Don't give up. Don't give in, because you're closer than you think. You can definitely do this. Tony did it, and his book is here today to show us and to help us understand that we can rise if we be determined. This book was written, it was written encapsulating Tony's journey from 1999 to 2007. While sitting at the kitchen table, Tony realized the birth of his only begotten son in 1999 started it all. It started him on this path and made him realize the importance of the kind of legacy that he wanted to create for not only his son but for his family. And great things that happen to us in life, like the birth of children, will cause us to reflect. It was something paramount, of great importance, life-changing, if you would, that caused Tony to start to assess, where he was in life as opposed to where he had been. And that was the birth of his son, Kendall. He began to compare all of what he had considered, where he had been. He had began to compare all of that to where he felt he was meant to be. In other words, Tony was giving himself a self-evaluation. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest things you can do is forget about all the outside noise. Forget about what others have said about you. Forget about the naysayers. Forget about the haters. You know what I say about haters? Let the haters keep on hating, because the haters are going to hate. You can't stop haters from hate. They get up drinking haterade in the morning. They eat haterade for dinner and for lunch. You can't stop the haters. But what you can do, and it's a biblical principle, you can evaluate yourself. All right? He began to compare all of that to where he felt he was meant to be. You see, Tony began to recall how he was in several musical bands as a teenager. He began to recall how he wrote songs. He made music videos made a music video in high school. He was actively singing in his church choir and in his school choir. He had participated in many talent shows around Chicago. Tony was voted the most talented by his high school peers. He received great recognition from his college constituents for his great talent. It was after all of this evaluation, self-evaluation, that Tony thought he was ready now to try the music industry. It was not easy when he got started. As a matter of fact, Tony met with a Capitol Record affiliate, Uptown Records, and other labels, but he was turned down. But guess what? Tony didn't give up. He was patient. Finally, he was offered one recording contract from an independent label. But his attorney advised him not to sign the contract because of some of the wording in the contract, the language of the contract. So he didn't sign the contract. And he didn't sign it in hopes that, okay, maybe they'll offer me another contract. But beloved, that contract never showed up. Have you been in that situation where you held out on one deal because you knew you were worth more, but it didn't show up? The second offer didn't come. It never came. But guess what? Tony did not give up. He was patient. He was patient. Tony landed a music publishing deal for his songwriting. I told you he was multi-talented. Which paid him one $75 royalty check. Because Tony did not give up and had still been patient. As a last attempt, in the mid-90s, he released a self-published R&B CD with songs that was chronicling his life from early on to the present. After some local newspaper and radio coverage, Tony decided not to release the CD nationwide because he was not satisfied with the final sound production of the CD. But how could he determine not to release the CD if he did not give himself a self-evaluation? I want to stay there for a minute because one of the greatest tools that Satan has used to keep us tied down and to keep us from reaching our next goal is pride. And the Bible says that before the great fall comes, pride comes first. It is pride. Some of us never wants to hear anything negative about ourselves. Some of us cannot take negative criticism. Well, I'm here to tell you one of the greatest tools that you have in order to make yourself better. One of the greatest tools you have in order to move to the next level. One of the greatest tools you have in order to move and progress in life is self-evaluation. Now, can I keep it 100 with you without any caps? My eldest sister, Joyce, who I call my second mother, she was the one who labored to help me to understand and help me to think critically about my own body odor and my own appearance. And I was just like any other little boy. It's not that I didn't want to take a bath, but you watching TV and you're watching cartoons of Batman and Robin his own, and you ain't ready to go to bed. It's not that you hate the water, but you're not ready to go to bed. And if you take your bath, the next thing is bedtime. So you hated to hear them saying take a bath. But the point is, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, you should be the first one who know that it's time for a bath. Y'all ain't gonna help me here, but y'all know I'm gonna keep it real preacher. I'm gonna keep it 100 with no caps. You should be the first one to observe your state of being, talking about hygiene, and to know that it's time to visit the shower. It is the same way with your education. It's the same way with your career. It's the same way with whatever task you have set your hands to. You should be the one to give yourself the first evaluation. So what happens then is that if you have noticed some things because you've taken the time to give yourself self-evaluation, when someone else who loves you come along and say something to you, they will just reaffirm what you've already observed. But if you don't take the time to give yourself self-evaluation, someone who comes along who truly loves you and truly only trying to help you be better says something to you, and then you have an attitude. My 93-year-old mother, God bless her heart, still going strong. Just took her to a doctor's appointment on Friday, and I tell you, she got some great news. And it's not the doctor, it's Almighty God, Dr. Jesus. But my mother have always told us, when you hear somebody tell you something, even if you don't agree right away, take it. Turn it over in your mind. Think on it. You know what Mama is saying? Do a self-evaluation. That's a biblical principle. Take heed lest you also fall, unless you get caught in the snare, unless you get caught in the trap. If you're going to be great, one of the greatest gifts you can use is self-evaluation. When you discover something needs to be better, you're ahead of the game. All right? In Tony's early years, he loved to write. Tony wrote plays and skits, which he produced in church and college. Tony wrote a Bible study book in his early 20s that he used to actually teach from in his church, at Great Sheldon Heights Church of Christ, Evangelist Leonardo D. Gilbert there, minister, one of my brothers in love, service, one of the bishops there, John Thomas. Great church, great legacy there. Tony taught that material in that church, but he never published it. Tony has written many songs and poems, but unfortunately he declares that most of them have been unknowingly thrown away because they was written on scraps of paper and had faded, and perhaps someone threw them away because they thought it was garbage. Some others just faded with time, and some are lost. As Tony reminisced further on where he had been, he recalls his love for radio, for speech and television communication. Brother Miles, why are you sharing all this? When are we going to get to the other part of it? Well, let me tell you something. You need this as your foundation, because this is the very foundation of what Determined to Rise was written on. A man of patience and a man of self-evaluation. Those are two precious tools that you need if you're going to rise. And even if you're going to be determined to rise, you have to have patience, and you have to commit to a self-evaluation process. So yes, he further recalls his love for radio, speech, and television communication. As a teenager, he and his childhood friend Darren Campbell used to make cassette tapes pretending like they were DJs, or even record themselves playing records, and they even wrote commercials with sound effects. His love for this particular industry led him to study this field in college. In his senior year, he secured an internship in radio and TV communications at the ABC affiliate in Devonport, Iowa. And although Tony experiences were great, he did not pursue a career in television communication. Instead, he did like many of us do. He accepted a higher paying job in the insurance industry instead. But how did he get to that point? And we're going to start right here because our time is well spent, and I try not to go over 30 minutes because I don't want to give you too much at one time, because I really want you to absorb the message of this lesson. And I'm not in any hurry. I can't tell you how many lessons it's going to be because I'm not in any hurry. I'm letting the Lord lead me, and because I'm determined to rise and to help you rise. And this is an awesome book that Tony has written. But why share all of this? You needed to see his journey, and we're not done, but I just have to stop here. We'll continue in 1999 as he got started in this introduction, and we'll go on a little further. But I wanted you to see two major things through Tony's chronicling in this introduction. And the first thing is that if you're going to be determined to rise, you're going to have patience. You're going to have to be patient. Nothing good and that lasts long comes overnight or just like that. The second thing you must do, beloved, you must learn to self-evaluate. One of the greatest gifts you can have is the gift of knowledge, knowing about you, something about you before somebody else sees it. Because the more you know about you before someone else sees, the less they will see that you don't know. I think I said something. Let me give it to you again, press it upon your heart. The more you see about you first before someone else sees it, the less they will know about you. And I'm talking about error. I commend you to God and the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among the sanctified. May God keep you is my prayer. Until next time, take care of yourself. Share this with someone else that they might be blessed.